Imagine holding something that will help build cities, feed armies, create empires. It is not a weapon. It is not a machine. It is not even a finished meal. It is a grain, a tiny, dry seed resting in your hand. But there is a problem. It is hard, unpleasant to chew. There are no supermarkets, cookbooks, no electric grinders, or controlled ovens. So how did our ancestors transform this seed into bread, making the food that became a foundation of civilization? The answer begins with hunger, experimentation, and fire. For most of human existence, people survived by hunting and gathering wild plants. Groups moved from place to place, following herds, seasons, and water. Then, thousands of years ago, life began to change. Communities started collecting wild grains. Wheat and barley became especially important. Instead of constantly moving, some people remained close to their crops. Villages formed. Harvests were stored. But growing grain created a completely new problem. A field full of wheat looked like food, but the kernels were still extremely tough. People first had to break them apart, so they used stones. Picture someone kneeling beside a large flat rock. They crushed the kernels again and again, repeating the same movement for hours. The husks split. The hard centers break down. Eventually, the grain becomes a rough powder. It was not the smooth flour we recognize today, but it was softer and far more useful. Then someone adds water. The powder darkens. It clumps together. Hands begin pressing, squeezing, and folding it, until it becomes a thick paste, a primitive dough. This may not look revolutionary, but it was a major breakthrough. The grain could now be shaped. It could be divided into portions. It could be carried and combined. Most importantly, it could be cooked. But how do you bake dough when ovens do not exist? You use the technology already at the center of life: fire. Ancient people may have placed dough on hot stones. Others may have pushed it into glowing ash. The outside would begin to harden. Moisture trapped inside would become steam. The starches softened. The raw paste transformed into something edible. Imagine the first person pulling it from the ashes. It may have looked burnt. They brush away the ash. They tear it open. And inside, they discover something soft. The smell was completely different. The taste was richer. The surface was crisp, the center warm. Unlike porridge or dough, it could be carried. That simple flatbread represented freedom. It could feed a family. It could travel with hunters, traders, and workers. It required grain, water, stones, and fire. Still, baking directly in ash was not perfect. Some pieces burned while others remained raw. So people began improving the process. They heated flat stones. They dug pits and lined them with rock or clay. They built fires inside. Once the coals were removed, dough was placed inside. The pit held heat longer than an open fire. Ancient bakers were learning about stored heat. They were inventing the earliest ovens. Heated pits became clay and mud brick structures. Some were domes. Others were tall and narrow. Dough could be placed on the floor or walls. Bakers could produce more bread at once. Then fermentation changed bread again. Final discovery and conclusion.